Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, Gauteng Premier David Makhura will deliver his State of the Province address tomorrow. And on the minds of many motorists is the issue of e-tolls. Now, just yesterday, the ANC in Gauteng vowed to continue its fight to have them scrapped. The party says government needs to come up with an alternative plan. And joining me in studio now to tell us more about what they'd like to see happen is Wayne Duvenage from the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse. Wayne, thank you for your time and welcome.
Nice to be with you.
I suppose just to get straight to the point, tomorrow we're seeing the Premier, David Makhura, addressing Gauteng residents on what his plan, of course, is for his term. What would you like to hear or see happen, especially with regards to e-tolls?
Well, I mean, it's so long overdue to be scrapped. You know, Premier Makhura, when he came into power in 2014 to head up the province, it was at that stage that he started the whole e-toll the panel that investigated the impact, the socio-economic impact at the time. And yet we've gone nowhere. But what has happened is that the contracts have ended. So there's that excuse of, well, we can't do anything until the contracts have ended. They ended last year. They've had a temporary contract put in place while they try and find the solution. So the Premier has been on record month after month, every so often, really denouncing e-tolls. But that doesn't help to denounce. What we need is the national government to listen more and to make the decision and pull the plug. And the sad reality, well, the good reality, I suppose, but for government is that the scheme is defunct. Less than, and we now think it's closer to 20%. Certainly a little while ago it was 25%. Less and less people are paying. They've put a halt to the litigation process before the elections. So the scheme is just in limbo. I think the quickest way you bring it to an end is for David Makhura to say to his own political entities and officers to stop paying e-tolls as well. Because everybody else has. There are some government officers that aren't paying e-tolls either.
We also know that the ETC has, approximately 1,200 staff directly working with them. And, the CEO, Kuni Vermaak, had reportedly said 38,000 jobs would be indirectly affected should e-tolls be stopped. And especially now the conversation being around retrenchments, I suppose he's seeking sympathy
yes,
with the stakeholders.
I mean, that is absolute nonsense to say that 38,000 jobs are potentially going to be lost. What he's insinuating there is that e-tolls is the only way you can finance roads, and that's the road construction jobs that he's talking about. Now, we know that we have to pay for road construction, and we know that the roads need to be widened and improved in Gauteng, but there are other ways to pay for them, and the e-tolls is the worst way, because right now all the money, around 50 to 60 million rand a month, is just going to ETC to pay the salaries of the people to collect. It just makes no sense. Not 1 rand is going into the tarmac, into those bonds that built the roads. So what you need to do is scrap e-tolls, use the existing mechanisms on which we have built these roads for many years, which, by the way, is 1.6 billion rand less per annum in administration fees. That's if ETC got their way. If everybody was paying, and that was the biggest waste of money out. This has been an absolutely diabolical mistake by government. I think they know that, and now they should just stop dilly-dallying and make the decision and pull the plug. And there are solutions, there are alternatives, but to continue down this road is crazy. So maybe there's going to be some good news tomorrow. But the president, and it's a national decision, actually.
Let's talk about the consumers for a moment, Wayne. You mentioned that less and less Gauteng residents are paying towards e-tolls. That's, of course, shown in black and white on paper. However, in the past, we've heard ETC say that its board had taken a decision to sort of stop the debt that they would want or previously had intended to recuperate back from those who had not paid back, rather their e-tolls. What's the status on that?
Well, what happened was that they were sending summonses out there. Now, you must remember there's 3 million motorists in debt to SANRAL, and they started sending out about a year and a half, 2 years ago, very slowly. I think they've sent out about 15,000 summonses, of which only a handful, about 3,000, have reached the residents or the motorists, of which 2,000 OUTA is defending. And then that whole court case was just put on hold by a decision, a board decision, in March, I think, this year, prior to the elections, by SANRAL. So if you don't chase your debt, and if you don't show that you're serious about chasing debt, well, then you are sending the wrong message when it comes to the litigation process. So that was the one strength, the last sort of strength that they had, was that they had to demonstrate they were seriously going after the money. Well, they've actually now given that race up. So there's nothing more that they can hang on to convince the public that the scheme needs to continue to operate. You must also remember that the National Credit Bureaus have also deemed that e-tolls debt cannot be used to blacklist you. So since then, I think motorists and certainly big corporates and lots of companies have stopped paying their bills. They'd rather have the money in their bank accounts than in SANRAL's, because you don't get your money back if e-tolls are scrapped. So you know, I think the quicker the public realise that the last 20%, if they stop paying tomorrow, the scheme will die.
No, just lastly, going into just the Premier's speech tomorrow, we've heard the ANC caucus yesterday, saying they have taken a resolution in the Lekgotla to fight, against e-tolls. The Premier just said that he had, of course, asked his MEC in Transport, Mr. Jacob Mamabolo, to look into the issue of, e-tolls. The Transport Minister, newly just appointed now, Fikile Mbalula as well. We're waiting to hear what he'll have to say. Do you think the right amount of pressure is sort of, diverted towards the Premier to scrap e-tolls, also expecting the President to say something about it?
Yes. I think politically the right amount of pressure has been put on the national officers to do so. But you must remember that if it wasn't for the people who stood their ground and civilly were disobedient in this process, and rightfully so, there might not have been an appetite from a political point of view to halt it. So this is the people's fight. The people have won this battle. It's just a matter of time, and now the politicians know that they've got to keep the pressure up as well, because you've got a local election coming up in a couple of years' time as well. So, yeah, I think it's pretty much dead and buried.
I suppose we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully we'll have a conversation about it after the speech tomorrow. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
For your time.